to this afternoon. Today is June 29th, Wednesday, and today we have a very special show we're doing in honor of the Great Peace March reunion, which is the 30th one here near Iowa City in West Branch at Scattergood School. And we have two of the Great Peace Marchers here with us who are gracing us with their presence and have many stories to share. And so we'll get into lots of the nuances, but maybe we can introduce. This is John Jorgensen.
Hi, John Jorgensen, and I was on the Great Peace March in 1986 from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. I made the whole trip. I didn't walk the entire way, but I was on support a lot of the time on the educational buses that we had back then. And then in 2014, I went on I would say it was a continuation of the Peace March, but the Great March for Climate Action, which also came through Iowa City and also stayed at the Scattergood School, the Friends School.
Yeah.
Berta Lambert, on the Great Peace March, one of the two people that actually did every step of the walk, about 3,700 miles, starting in Washington, D.C., or starting in Los Angeles and going to Washington, D.C., but going first to New York before we went to Washington. There have been a whole series of walks since then, including some in the Soviet Union, many in the United States, what we refer to as regional walks. Probably 14 or 15 of them. I've done probably about 10 of them. Total of 10,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
Standing joke is they used to be 11 foot tall.
So, but people are not, but you're looking at two people here have been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize through the Great Peace March.
Have we really?
Yeah, you have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. You knew that, I think.
Yes.
And
Wow.
if you want to, so we'll talk about that, but, so it's a real honor to have you here.
Thank you.
You're from Arizona?
Yes, I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and just got into Iowa City just the other day. Came in through a between 48 and 50 hours on the bus, and rode in the torture seats of the Greyhound line, and but it's worth it to be here and see people I haven't seen in 30 years. That's the amazing thing, because it's my first reunion, because the Great Peace March did many reunions. I don't know how many, but it's been 30 years. So, and like I said, I've seen these folks, and it's like, oh, how you been? Oh, you look familiar. You look the same. Just a little grayer.
Yeah.
We all look a little grayer, and I have
Yeah.
a little more hair on my face. But it's really great to see people again and have this reunion, which is just it's a recharge.
Yeah.
It's definitely a recharge.
Yeah, amen.
Amen.
I've had the good fortune of being at, I think, at all the reunions, average about every 5 years. We had our 20th anniversary, which we planned in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, it rained so bad that they had to close down the government offices while we were there.
Oh, wow.
Enjoyed seeing our fellow walkers. I might point out that the Great Peace March, its title is really the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament. That was its focus, as was the several walks that were done in the Soviet Union, as were the regional walks in Ohio, California. There were 3 or 4 in Florida to Georgia, or Georgia to Florida, in Missouri, in Michigan, and other places. The purpose is to bring pressure on governmental folks to bring down the nuclear weapon systems, to go to zero, which we're obligated to by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. We have not done that. While there has been some reduction, we're in the process currently of actually enhancing the capabilities and making the lifespan of the current nuclear arsenal longer. And we should be going the other direction by negotiation with all the other superpowers, particularly Russia and China and Israel, which a lot of people don't realize has a nuclear weapon. And that's a cause of a lot of difficulties in that part of the world. And other countries that have the capability to do it. And intertwined with the nuclear weapons explosions is the nuclear industry, which produces energy. Quite often, people will refer to nuclear energy as clean energy. It's not dirty in the sense of coal, but it's dirty because the byproducts of that last thousands and thousands of years, in some cases hundreds of thousands of years. So the emphasis for the walks that we're talking about today concern the nuclear industry and having a more peaceful existence. And the one technology that we've created that has a possibility of destroying every living creature is in fact the nuclear issue.
Mm-hmm.
The other closely related, but with some different issues, although we're part of that, is environmental issues
Yes.
in general, because that too threatens the existence of humanity.
Yeah.
Not in one quick flash, but a long-term.
A whimper.
Yes, a
You know,
whimper.
what inspired me to go on the climate march, climate change is a huge, huge issue. It's an existential issue, and that's why I'm on this. One of my idols would be Carl Sagan, Dr. Carl
Yes.
Sagan, and in one of his final interviews that he had with Charlie Rose asked him, "What are the two big issues for you, Carl?" And he said, "Well, the two existential issues of our time are nuclear war and climate change." And you know, we have the capacity to wipe ourselves out. And when you said the whimper, it reminded me of the T.S. Eliot quote. You know, if not for a bang, we'll go out with a whimper. And so, you know, I think when we did the Peace March, we were dealing with the bang portion of
Yes.
it, right? And you know, and I believe that it had the effect, because when you look at the numbers of nuclear weapons, they you know, they were building up during the Reagan years, and they built up and they built up, and then after 1986, that's when they started having the SALT talks, and that's when they started going down a number. Now one nuclear weapon is one too many on the planet, but instead of 50,000 warheads from that time, I think we're down to 10,000.
I think it's 10,000.
Okay, around 10,000 nuclear warheads.
The
Still too many, you know, but we had the effect, I think, didn't we? You know, to bring that down, and involve people, you know, to get into negotiations to bring those numbers down. We influenced Reagan, of all people. And,
Yeah.
you know.
Something that you wouldn't have expected. I was going to mention that Carl Sagan was the co-author of a book, a technical but written in layman's language, which described the nuclear winter.
Yes.
It's now about 20, maybe 25 years old, but almost all libraries still carry the book. It's
Yeah.
important.
So let's
Full cycle.
return to those thrilling days of yesteryear.
Yeah.
To at least get a what you call a hologram, a feeling of the three-dimensional field in which we were dealing, and it
Yeah.
was 5 minutes to midnight or something like that.
Minutes.
And
yeah.
the planet was being threatened with obliteration in real time.
Yes.
And so this book came out of there.
Yes.
And the nuclear winter.
The
So
nuclear
you want
winter?
to say what that was like?
Well, Carl Sagan was. There's some interesting parallels here with our two issues, but Carl Sagan had studied the Venusian, the atmosphere of Venus, and they approached him. I think it was actually the Pentagon or the Defense Department that said, "Well, we want an analysis on, you know, what would happen if you used all these nuclear weapons? What would happen to the atmosphere and everything like that? And you know, if you set all these cities on fire, for example." And Carl Sagan was amongst the group of scientists that they hired for this study, and he came up with the term nuclear winter. And that many fires, all these cities burning, that much smoke would go around the planet. And so, you know, there was the notion, especially in the Reagan administration, that you could just lob these things over, and you know, a nuclear war was winnable, and you know, we could survive it with, what was it saying, with enough shovels.
With enough shovels.
With enough shovels, people could dig their own grave, you
yeah.
know, and put a doorway over it and put enough dirt on it. Oh, you can go through this thing. It was. Why did we? You know, when I heard that kind of thing back then in the 1980s. It was just like, this is insanity. This is insanity. How can they talk this way? How can they think that this is an okay thing to do? And you know, and then of course the nuclear winter paper came out and said, no, you cannot win a nuclear war. This is a different world we're in, right? A different world of thinking.
It was important to understand that when they did that study, the scientists that they dealt with were not just Americans, but also people in the then Soviet Union.
Oh, okay.
And what they found that there's somewhat of an analogy between the super asteroids that have,
Yeah.
for example, in the extinct experience for the dinosaurs 60 million years ago, that you'd have so much dust and material in the air that you would not be able to grow crops. And as a result, whole species die. And literally, my guess is that probably if we had a nuclear winter, two creatures might exist, and that would be the roaches and the rats.
That's kind of what the current, like, there's a fifth extinction, or is it?
We're in a sixth extinction right now, according to biologists, and this is now from climate change.
To put
and
that in
heating up.
context, I mentioned that we did several walks between Florida, basically Cape Canaveral and southern Georgia. And those are around the issues of a system called the Trident 2D5. And both the production of the submarine and the production of the rockets. One submarine, because missiles have multiple warheads, so if you have one that has 10, you have another one that has
Yes,
10,
yeah.
they vary in numbers. But one submarine, one of these Trident submarines, will have the explosive power of more than was exploded by both sides in the Second World War. One single submarine.
Right.
One.
We have that.
Yeah,
That's something to.
That's imminent danger if it were to
Yeah.
happen, by accident or on purpose.
I think that, so that we can get a feel for that, that's like one nuclear submarine called the Trident has enough explosive power greater than the entire bombs dropped in World War
Yeah.
II.
Both sides.
Both sides, not just one. So that's the gravitas of
Yes.
the issues that these peace people have been dealing with here.
thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an existential, it's an issue of our existence.
It's the megatonnage.
The megatonnage of nuclear weapons and the immediacy of that and dealing with that threat. And we still have, of course, too many nuclear weapons on the planet.
We have more than collectively all the rest of the world has. And the importance of this is that currently, while we're not decreasing the numbers and haven't for some years, there has
Okay.
been over the period of years a decrease, but there is now a technical improvement of the lifespan of each one of the nuclear weapons,
Okay, so
which
back-
guarantees, in a sense, that future presidents in this country, and I understand the Russia's doing the same thing, that it puts a horrific power in single individuals, a small number of individuals, rather than letting them die by natural attrition and adhering to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which we're a
Yes.
signature of, and which
That's right.
requires by our own Constitution, once you sign a treaty, it becomes in effect part of the Constitution, required to follow the elements in that. And we should do that, and to let the people who would be of the population of the United States and the world to understand that if war were deemed necessary, there are enough conventional weapons of enormous power, minus the radiation, that we could effectively defend ourselves. And hopefully even those will never be used, but radiation is an extraordinary extra element.
Yeah,
So all these walks and people throughout the country, because it's not just the walkers, the support that they get along the way,
This
in
is
minor
what's
things,
important.
from giving you an apple, to providing a place for you to stay, to giving money. All of us have had personal and collective experiences in doing walks in all parts of the United States.
Would you like to, I think you taught college at one time?
well, I teach, I'm a high school science teacher, and I'm semi-retired now to do more activism. And I taught environmental science. When I was on the Peace March, I was a geek about studying nuclear weapons and how they worked, and the physics that went into them, and then the nuclear winter. And I was aware of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, and that's still in print.
Yes.
And right now, actually, they have set their clock again to 3 minutes to midnight. And we're talking about nuclear weapons, and we have to talk about the destabilization effects. Because when would we use those? When are weapons used? When is warfare ever declared? It's always like over some resource. And what's going to be diminished by climate change is things like water and food. And that's when that can lead to destabilization and warfare. And that's what's going on now. Like we're seeing the immigration from Syria. Syria has a climate change it's definitely, I mean, it's many things that are involved with this, but there's the climate change component. You know, what became the Arab Spring was because they had a drought, and it was forcing the farmers off the land. They could not grow food anymore. They could not grow their crops. And the wheat and the price of bread went up, right? Plus, you had people going to the cities to find jobs and stuff like that because it wasn't working out in the fields. People concentrated in the cities, and then price of bread went up. They couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't feed their families. This was the climate change component, you know, the drought, the long-term drought there. And it led to the Arab Spring, which has now led to the ISIS and this war. So many of these things are connected. And we have to, you know, we're at the mercy of these nuclear weapons too, because they could be easily used. You know, you have hot points like India and Pakistan. India right now and Pakistan, they're going through heat waves. What was it, 124 degrees?
In Calcutta,
in
just here
Calcutta?
about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Phoenix, 118 just recently.
Yes. Yeah, I came up from Tucson to get out of the heat.
Yeah, it was 120 down there, wasn't it?
Yeah, in Phoenix, well, Phoenix, the city, of course, has what they call the heat island effect, right? So these extremes of temperature, and we're seeing these extremes of drought where it's dry, and we're seeing extremes of wetness where it's wet. You know, this has all been foretold by the scientists. Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, if you haven't subscribed to that.
People need to hear this.
Yeah, you need to hear this. So they've set their clock to 3 minutes to midnight, and it's a combination of the two. They're talking more and more about climate change, and they're saying, and the aspect of nuclear war as a result of the stress we're all going to go through.
Deprivation,
Yeah.
frustration, and fighting for resources.
Yes, the fighting for resources. Yeah.
It's also important to understand that in our current presidential race, one of the two candidates is talking about encouraging other countries to have an active nuclear program. That's not in the interest of both the countries
No,
or the
no, oh my
worldwide. Because more you have available, more likely you're going to have factors and personalities will make irrational decisions.
Yeah.
And that's very, very important in terms of keeping world
Who's
peace. In fact,
doing
the
that?
pressure needs to be to de-escalate and pressure on both your Congress people and the people in the executive.
So, what got you when, like, in the early '80s or so, that you became like you've been an activist for your entire life? But,
Yes.
But this nuclear focus, what was that?
Well, I don't have a degree, but I have about 8 years of college and university work. And as a result of that, I was doing broad studies, cultural studies in multiple areas. So as a result, the spectrum of information I had available to me was very wide. The Great Peace March was in 1986, and I graduated from 1959 in a small town in West Virginia. Important for context. Opposed the Vietnam War, because that was also at the same height of the civil rights movement. And I saw that this was an important movement. I lived and do still live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there were a group of 15 people that were going to join the walk. And went to California to do that in '86. It went from March the 1st to November the 15th. So there was quite an experience. Cold, wet, medium weather, great rains in some places. Some dramatic photos have been taken. And also, by the way, a documentary film about the Great Peace March.
That's right.
And in fact, I understand in our camp at Scattergood that will be available at $25. And
You want to mention what the name of it is?
escapes me at the moment.
Just
You
one
had me.
step.
Just
Thank
one
you.
step. You can see it on YouTube.
Get me out of that debt. But it's important, and there are several cultural things that came out of the Great Peace March. One, for just the fun of it, is a recording made by Women on the Wall called Wild Women for Peace. And they do peace songs, but also some with some comic effect that you enjoy. And they've dedicated the funds from selling those to women's shelters throughout the United States. They can get a quantity of them and sell them and raise money. And it's still quality. And several years ago, at one of our reunions in Oregon, a folk singer in Michigan took it from a tape and put it on a CD. So it's now available in that technology.
Now, this is like interesting. You show the relationship between women's shelters, probably domestic violence or some kind of abuse, and what nuclear weapons do to Mother Earth. There is a relationship there. But we do, we do on a mega scale. It's just projected out a little bit. But there's a relationship between the family that's the nuclear family
Yeah.
that is abused, and then the abuse of nuclear weapons on the planet Mother Earth as to the human family, and the hidden costs are the fallout and the stored radioactive waste. So these are the twilight scenarios of the Western Twinkie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's like the song, but like, so you're dealing with life and death on a kind of, you're dancing in the desert of our lives,
Right. Yeah.
And these early, you can go where you want with that.
I don't know where to go with that, but I'd like us to talk probably about like what's the value of marching.
Okay.
And how is marching different from other types of protests, right? I remember in Nebraska with the climate march, I was walking along, and we were in Culbertson, Nebraska for July 4th, and we get on the 4th of July parade. The Great March for Climate Action had a lot fewer numbers. It was like maybe 50 people or a couple dozen at sometimes. And we were at the tail end of their little 4th of July march. But I was walking along, and these guys, these farmer guys up on a big old tractor said, "Hey, why don't you lay down in front of our tractor?" And I was like, no, it's not that kind of protest. It's a march. There's a difference. This isn't about laying in front of people or
Were they
or
saying it like
blocking.
they wanted to run you over?
Yeah, they were saying it like they wanted. They're,
They were kidding, but
they were
but
kidding.
they're
But
also
it's-
getting a jab in there.
Yeah, they're getting a little jab in there. It's just, but I said, no, it's not that kind of a protest. A march is a different thing, because what it is, it's a sacrifice, isn't it? It's a sacrifice of a part of your life for something that you're doing something crazy. I felt like I was doing something crazy to walk across the country and then do this twice, because it's in response to what is crazy going on out there. This, a nuclear arms race at the time that threatened to annihilate the planet, and people going along day by day like, oh, this is okay, just business as usual.
You're
No,
traveling
we can-
along a deeper philosophical
Yeah.
and spiritual bent, much as Mahatma Gandhi or Peace Pilgrim.
Yeah,
You're traveling a different road in time and space
yeah. It's to
for the
say-
higher good.
for the higher good, and you're giving up on a lot of the other things to maybe you might be sacrificing time, instead of earning a living or whatever, you're sacrificing time, money. People mortgage their homes, right? To go on the peace march way back when, and give
And
up a lot.
Yeah, and
Give
you
up a piece of career and things like that.
And on the Great Peace March, one has to understand, you're talking about several thousand people on the move.
Yeah,
And so you were able to do a lot more than, say, one of 100
yeah.
or smaller. Outreach programs, speaking at the local Lions Club, doing
Yes.
TV interviews, radio interviews, newspaper coverage. And people, as you went across the country, always were impressed by the mileage. If you went
Yeah.
500 miles, you're a couple months later, you've gone 1,000 miles. People are very impressed by that. And walking is interesting. It's one foot in front of the other. You have to be persistent. Some days are easier than others. But the importance is that you're working and people understand that sacrifice. And you have a lot of chance to do outreach even on a personal basis. Most of the walks I've walked at the end of it, quite often called the turtle because of that. I'm capable of walking faster, but there was more outreach possibility at the end, because when you have a large mass of people going by you, people are intimidated.
Right.
But if you're in the back, somebody will talk to you. They'll tell you about something that's going down the road to a side area. ask you who you are, where you're from, maybe buy you a sandwich or something, which is nice. And always water is appreciated. I was reminded when you were talking about the tractors.
Yeah.
And on the Great Peace March, you had a large number of people, and not always facilities for enough showers.
Right.
So on occasion, in the hot part of the summer, fire people would come out, and people would put on their bathing trunks. It would be in a field, and they would
Yes.
have fun squirting all the walkers. And we appreciated that water at that time. So the technology can move either way, and depending on the attitudes of local folks. Marches are also in themselves interesting because you form a lot of subgroups. I mentioned the Wild Women for Peace. There are people who do outreach. You have to find the place that you're going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do to feed 1,000 people or 100 people, depending on the size of your march?
Mm-hmm.
What about the weather patterns? They can be great in terms of just nice weather, or they're being cold and wet. And on the Great Peace March, we had, for example, problems with bad rain at times. Towards the end, we had cold. It had emergency places for us to stay towards the end of the walk. So people appreciate it. It becomes dramatic in its own right. Several people have written books about it,
Yeah.
in addition to the documentary. One would expect that there would be future books. There's a lot on the internet, but not everything. And I don't know if there ever would be possible to put everything on there. There are literally a million stories. Most famous among the Peace March were what I call ice cream stories, where there was a rumor going down the line. We were in the Mojave Desert, and the rumor was going down that there was going to be ice cream at the next stop, because every 4 miles there would be a stop for the porta potties. And sure enough, we got there, and some local fellow had gone into a local store and made an ice cream cone for every walker on the walk.
Yeah.
Every walk I've been on, there's been some variation of that. But there are other kinds of personal stories that are just known among the people who happen to be present at that particular area. All that contributes both to the attitude within the walk and outside the walk.
So here, this is a modern day Odyssey, Ulysses event, right out of the Greek Odyssey. It's an American Odyssey that's never been reproduced or before or since. It's made planetary history. Here's 1,500, 2,000 people walking together for 9 months, just about the same time as a human embryo in developing in the fetus, developing in the womb, for the birth of a new human, basically a nuclear-free planet, you know.
There we go.
And here, these people are the seed protozygotes and protoplasm
Like
of
that. I like
that
that.
seed event, which is referred to as 100th monkey. So I invite you to, a little bit about physics and critical mass and.
I think I liked when you were talking. I was just remembering about community. This is where it's at, and like we have internet communications now and everything like that, but it's not. There's no substitute for face to face. We might have Facebook, but you get up in little bubbles there, and you end up in little bubbles of people that you agree with, and it's no way to communicate, the things that we need to learn from each other and count on each other. And the way to count on each other is through community. So, when you talked about the Great Peace March and going through the communities, that happened on the Climate March too. It's like people came forward and they said, "Oh, you have kids. We can identify with you. It's not just hippies here. It's people of all ages, all colors, all different backgrounds." And like for example, in Nebraska, that we were going through one town, and they were a little standoffish, right? And there was like, what do you do with these? Who are these people? What are they doing here? And but a pastor came out, and then he saw us, and he says, "We need to put you up in our church because there's a tornado warning. There was a tornado through that area just a couple days before." And
That's real deal life. For that
yeah,
man.
that's real life. Yeah, real life deal, real, like you said. And so they put us up, and then they saw how we interacted, because we were we were a walking community, you know, and people who were from different backgrounds and headstrong in ideals and so forth, but finding a way to get along, you know, to make this larger thing happen, and like this walk, you know, that's what appealed to me about the climate march. When I heard about it, I had said I had to go, just like I had the calling to go on the Great Peace March, and it was the same kind of calling to go on the climate march.
It was a wake-up call.
It was a wake-up call,
And
wasn't
here's
it?
these people in Nebraska kind of looking out their windows, like, just looking like, wait a minute, we're kind of hiding here.
Yeah, but they're seeing
But they're
climate
looking-
change, they're understanding, you know, and that's the thing, is people understand it, you know, viscerally, especially the farmers, especially the people who are on the land. They're seeing the changes that are happening, and, you know, you can't fool them.
No,
You can't fool them. So
think
it's-
they're the front line.
yeah, they're the front line. We're all the front line communities now.
I think all the walks try to be socially conscious.
Yeah.
When the Great Peace March went through Nebraska,
Yeah.
we went full length. We used to have fun with the locals. We said we can just roll a marble all the way across, because the dominant thing were fields of crops,
Yeah.
the Platte River, and the railroad.
Yeah.
And you could see in the distance most days a storage bin for agricultural products.
Right.
And but what happened was, in the incident of the Great Peace March, a lot of people became aware of the problem in Nebraska and other places for large corporate farming versus the family-owned farming, and how that is causing a crisis. So while we were educating on that issue, they were educating the walkers, who were from a diverse background around the country, and in fact around the world. Several people were from other countries. So there was an interchange of information. So that's the dynamic of most progressive walks.
Yeah, so like this walk,
I'm sorry, I just remembered. We watched the corn grow.
Yes.
Right? You start out at one end, like say the eastern part of Colorado, and going through Nebraska, and you see the corn from here, and then you're walking through Nebraska, and then you're walking through Iowa, and you're walking through Illinois, and by the time you're through all that, it's just, you know, it's a different pace of life, isn't it? When you're walking the planet, or you know, or watching these communities, meeting people one to one, and touching the earth right there, step by step, and like I said, watching the corn grow.
Common comment, people quite often locally would join us for a day or a week. Some would become addicted to walking and come back and join the walk.
Yeah.
It was incredible what they would do, which were always appreciated. And if you walked 1 hour or the whole walk, you were a marcher forever.
Yeah.
And that was good. But quite often people who walked with us, who had driven to work and to home, would say, I never noticed such a place, because when you're walking, you see more.
Yes.
You're also frustrated, though, in terms of seeing the country. You see more than most people ever have an opportunity to see. But you also realize all those side roads and all those side streets in urban areas that you never will have a chance to see. So there's a certain frustration if you have any sense of curiosity in knowing the world at large. But I think that also gives you a better sense of the world at large, even if you never go to India or Pakistan or China. You know, there's a world out there of people who care about nuclear issues and other social issues.
it's like Siddhartha and the Journey East in Hermann Hesse's work, and but you've kind of gone to India here in America, and it's the Journey East to D.C., where, you know, the wizard is behind the curtain, and you're Toto pulling the curtain back. What I want to get at is
Arf,
this,
arf.
so like this, the 3,700 miles that you walked, that's an American pilgrimage of the first rate order. No human beings, whether pilgrims of back in the 1850s, didn't do this walk. Nobody walked this walk, this particular walk. And the walk west was Manifest Destiny walk of colonization and oppression of the land and so on. But the walk east was a Manifest Divinity walk, where it was restoring the vision of some of the dream keepers of the Mayans that said, they came out and said, this is the beginning of the end of the 9 hells and the beginning of the 13 heavens. Some people came in and said that to some people in Rainbow Basin when you're all broke down. So that's what I was going to get at.
Yeah.
Was how you made that transformation in this difficult moment. You know, how
It was through people, you know, who came out and said, this is if you were curious, you know, they usually came through and they felt the heart of it, right?
And
They
there are
felt the heart
differences
of
in America besides the obvious ones of ethnic background.
Yeah.
There's a difference in culture between the predominant cultures in the West and the East. So that was an education for both parts of the country.
Yeah.
And of course, even another culture in the middle of the country. And some of them have overlapping elements. But you got to appreciate more because you were having an interchange every day with people on the walk, but you're also having exchanges with people locally. And that was, I think, an important broadening aspect. That while I think generally walkers, when they started to walk, understood the importance of the issue, they now became aware of the nitty-gritty differences that may not be great, but sometimes a problem in terms of human affairs.
Yeah, and that beginning of the walk, it was called Pro Peace, and
Oh, yeah.
it was kind of a catered walk or some kind of.
Yes.
You want to talk
I
about
remember
that?
that. Yeah. The Great Peace March, when it started out, it was a California production. There was an organization called Pro Peace. It was very professional. They spent a lot of money. They had, my first exposure to it, of course, was watching PSAs, public service announcements, and there they had this demonstration march, and they found these actors that go on it, and I said, wow, there's Spock, there's Leonard Nimoy, there's Mr. Spock himself, and Chekhov from the Enterprise, and they had Madonna and Roseanne Arquette, or Suzanne, or I forget her name.
Roseanne.
Roseanne Arquette, straight off the set of Desperately Seeking Susan, still wearing their underwear on the outside or something, whatever the fashion was. But you said, well, if Madonna's going to go on this Peace March, boy, count me in. And like you said, there was like somebody had described it as a Club Med on the move, and there was this great promise of things. But they spent a lot of money, and there was a lot of that groundwork was kind of laid out in anticipation of this huge turnout. But the numbers didn't come through, and then people didn't have the funds. So Pro Peace, how long did it take? When
A couple of weeks, we were out in the desert near Barstow.
Near Barstow, and then a couple of weeks in, they said, we're bankrupt.
Go home.
Either go home or figure it out. So what did we do out there in the middle of the desert? We sat there. So many people were like, "Oh my gosh, what?" So they were shattered. People did go home,
Yes.
but then there was a group of people that stayed and said, we circled up, didn't we?
Yes.
And that was a moment right there when people circled up and they just.
When the crisis came, we were actually in the desert, per se. And we eventually marched into Barstow. We were there several weeks, reorganized. And a lot of people left. Some left and came back.
Yeah.
But the hardcore stayed, and as we went across country, the numbers gradually grew as we went across the country. That's one of the great stories of the Peace March, is the fact that you had determination to continue on, that we had dedicated to doing that project. And even though Pro Peace really, in effect, told us to go home, but the personalities on the walk were sufficiently independent. But it was important, and we became more dramatic as a result of that, because we became a news item. We were a news item everywhere we went.
Yeah.
Every major, even in New York City, where there's a lot happening at any given time, we were a news item. There was a controversy as whether they're going to let us walk across the Verrazano Bridge. Ordinarily, nobody walks across there except when they have a marathon. And a group of us went and camped out at one end, and there were negotiations, and finally in the middle of the night they let us walk across. Now, unfortunately, there was fog on either side. You couldn't see either direction, but it was really exhilarating to walk across. But really, and most important about that is I did further regional walks after that walk. People in New York knew about that walk, because I would meet around the country, people knew, oh, you're the guys that walked across the Verrazano Bridge. So they
How
really
about that?
appreciated it. And I think that probably was a product of the fact that New York is generally a progressive city, and they saw that a bunch of us were willing to do civil disobedience. And having gone that far and not had a real conflict with local authorities that were threatening to arrest us, that was appreciated. And that, I think the World Series was going on. There were a lot of other news items that New York was covering, but the media did a really good job. Some of us only learned about some of the elements of that, because when you're on a walk, you don't always see, you don't see
Yeah.
that television, the radio, not even necessarily the newspapers. So they did well by us in terms of covering it, and that gave us, when things are known in New York, they're usually known worldwide.
So here you are out in the desert, and you miraculously pull this
Yeah.
group together with independent, fierce spirits.
Yes.
And I think it was your independence and your diverse independence of different groups of all kinds around the culture, around the country and the continent. That was the spirit of the pioneers this time.
Yeah, how about, yeah.
The interdependent spirit, and you're returning that to the American soil, the soul of America, basically reclaiming it from that dark night.
I love how you're putting that.
The dark
It's like,
night
I've
of
heard
the
it described.
nuclear.
I heard it described as a phoenix rising
Yeah.
from the ashes of pro peace. The march itself was a phoenix rising from that. And I like how you put that. The independent spirits. But even despite, we had such headstrong people. And of course, we had a lot of headbutting going on, in these endless meetings,
Endless.
right? These endless meetings. But that's what had to happen to pull it together, but we all pulled together because, despite our differences, we knew the issue was much bigger. The issue of nuclear weapons, and now the issue of course, the climate change. These are things big. Much bigger than ourselves and our own petty things, and we have to pull together. And there aren't these divisions of conservative and liberal and right and left. There really isn't. We are on this all. We're all in this together, and I think that was an important message of marching, and an important lesson to us individuals on the march was that we have to form a community, as difficult as that is, and as difficult as it is to get along with other people. And you got to imagine you're camping out with these people every single day. You're smelling them, and and then you're finding out the things that are the simple things that are so important. You're grateful for a shower. You're grateful for a meal.
Grateful.
Grateful.
Remember
Yeah.
standing in the desert, raining like crazy. You
Yeah.
came out of your tent. You had a dish to eat. You ate that dish, and then you went back in your tent because there was nothing that you could do because you were in a static situation.
Yeah.
After we left Barstow, we reorganized. One of the groups that helped us enormously was Claremont College in California, because food and transportation were two important elements, because you have to move the tents and personal
Yeah.
supplies and showers and porta potties and other objects. Claremont College provided us a lot of food, and we appreciated it for many weeks after, which helped stabilize the walk and helped a lot, underappreciated by the world at large, but among the peace marchers of that time, they were very instrumental. And while I don't know the internal politics at Claremont College, my impression was that it was the teachers and the students who made that effort.
I remember Claremont, and Claremont too was the first place that we had the Marcher in the Home program.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
On
Go
the
for
Great
it.
Peace March, right?
I explained that.
Yeah. Well, going through all the different counties, the Great Peace March, and of course the Climate March followed this example. But we were always having a difficulty finding places to camp. A lot of it was intense. An intense march, intense. But finding places to stay in Claremont, it was like, no, you're not staying in the parks. The officials came down. So what happened? The churches got together and said, well, we got to help the peace movement along. And so they reached out to their community members. They reached out to the church groups, and they suddenly started coming in they told us, meet in our parking lots, and this will be a staging area. And so people took marchers into their homes, where we got the showers that we needed.
Yes,
Laundry
always
got done.
appreciated.
Always appreciated. And my experience of that in the first time with Claremont was, this lady, I don't remember her name or anything, but she came in her station wagon, she picked up some marchers, and she brought them in, and we were sitting at the dinner table, and she goes, "There's more of you, isn't there?" And you go, "Oh, yeah. You think they could mind sleeping on the couch?" I said, "Oh, they won't mind sleeping on a couch at all. Even the rug. Oh, I'll go get some more." So she went off. She got more marchers. She brought them back. She goes, "Do you think they would mind sleeping on the floor?" No, the carpet, that'd be great. It beats anything. So she went back and got some more, and just filled her house with the marchers. But that Marcher in the Home program was a beautiful way for people to get involved with the march and become marchers themselves, right?
They would ask you about who you are, where
Yeah.
you're from, how long you've been on the march.
And they were involved. They
Yes.
became involved, and then they were part of the peace movement. And
The different levels of the lotus unfolding in the nuclear muck.
wow,
Yeah. Just your 100th monkey coming together. Muckety 99.
the monkey 99 in the muckety muck.
And the muckety muck of the truck.
There were lots of positive experiences.
Yes.
Quite often in a community, maybe of some particular denomination, they couldn't take the whole walk in.
Yes.
So they would give preference to somebody who was a Methodist or Presbyterian or whatever. And quite often people of that faith, there wouldn't be not enough of them, or they'd choose not to go. And you go to a church and they'd give you a nice dinner.
Yeah.
That happened all along the walk.
Yes.
One of the things that jumped out at me that I found extraordinary, when we were in Pittsburgh, we were staying up the hill, on one of the hills, Pittsburgh's in a hill, but what happened was somebody arranged for several hundred of us to go to the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
And
Wow,
this,
great.
it was really an incredible experience because we all went in our Walker outfits because we had nothing else.
Yeah.
And you had people very nicely dressed. We got a very good reception. In terms of urban areas in helping us, when we were present in their community, Pittsburgh, I thought, did an extraordinary job.
Mm-hmm.
But walks of all kinds. I've done walks that have been not related to the nuclear issue. And my experience and the experience of others who I've talked to who have done walks throughout the world is that generally people are receptive to causes because they appreciate the effort, and particularly ones that are focused on the existence of humanity. Because sometimes that existence might be there's a mine that's going to be built on their community. Well, that's
Yeah.
their world, and there's a plethora of issues around the world, many of them that we never hear of here in the United States, but it's important for the people there. And the fact that there have been, in our case, a lot of anti-nuclear walks, one would hope that tradition would help. One of the major changes between the Great Peace March and now, which you referred to earlier, is the technology. We had Walkmans, and they would set up a TV to show a film remote. Now, with the modern technology, everybody else is going to have a cell phone and the ability for immediate communication, which actually could enhance the walk. While you're doing a personal thing by doing the walk, it also helps keep you informed on a constant basis. And so I think modern walks will have, when they're able to put them together on issues, will have more access to more information on a more constant basis. One of the things that happened with when we were in the Great Peace March, of course, made news immediately, was Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And of course, that's been significant in terms of people's attitude towards energy produced by nuclear fission.
So here are two pioneers of light walking out of the darkness of the nuclear age. Right in our midst here, and each step is a step for seed for peace, a step for peace. So that's sown in the soil, but sown in the heart of each step we take. And I know you walked into Las Vegas and somebody won a bunch of money.
I remember that when we
$18.
Yeah, the fellow with the $18. So this was a story from the Great Peace March, and we had everybody had just come in off the Power Line Road through the Mojave Desert. What was like a week or more of walking through the desert, right? And then they come out of all that walking along the power line road, and then the first thing you saw was Whiskey Pete's, and it was a big casino.
Yes.
All the flashing lights and all this craziness there, and it was what a contrast. You just had all these peaceful, quiet, open sky nights, and then you came to this casino. But out in that big parking lot that was behind Whiskey Pete's, that's where we were camped out. And this fellow shows up with his pickup truck, and apparently he had won a bunch of money in Las Vegas. He did very well, and he brought his truck, and he had ice cream in it. He filled it up with ice cream, and then he gave everybody on the march $18 each. He gave, and they were lined up, and they each got 18. Now 18 had some kind of significance.
Yeah, in the Jewish
It
tradition.
was Jewish, wasn't
Okay,
it?
yeah, that's what I'd heard, and I don't know
It
what the
has-
significance
I was one of the
is. I'm
few
sorry.
people that didn't get the $18, which was
Oh.
particularly sad because I was the poorest guy on the walk. The reason was, it was the only time on the whole walk where actually before the sun went down, I had trouble finding my tent.
Yeah.
And somebody else helped me out. And then there was people going around calling out that this $18 was available, but I wasn't about ready to leave. I was never going to find my home tent again, so I missed out on that. But that's one of the great stories on the Peace March, was that $18, which helped every individual marcher.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure the ice cream went a long
Oh,
way.
I
too,
didn't.
after
This is
that
the
hot
first I ever
desert.
heard about the ice
Yeah,
cream.
yeah.
That may have been an extra incentive.
So like
Ice cream stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
know
give
that
Those
ice cream
simple
story.
things in life that made the difference to somebody who was walking and doing through all that. And it was, but like we were saying before, it was a way for many people to be involved, and you can find
never
your
knew.
way to. You never knew what kind of change you could make.
And that
I
was
think that's an important theme right now. We
Okay.
explorers, you never know what difference you can make, but you just got to get out and try. And I've heard so many stories afterwards, and coming to the reunion, I'm hearing even more about, oh, did you know that we affected this person this way, and that this is what they did. That the Peace March and the Climate March became galvanizing and focal points for people to gather around. Just one example was when we walked through on the Climate March, when we walked through Colorado Springs. There was all these disparate groups. I mean, desperate, but disparate meaning different types of groups. They're all concerned about climate change, but they wanted their own approach to it, and nobody wanted one umbrella group telling everybody else what to do, right? And so the Climate March came through, and they all came together because this was something they could come together on. Well, we got to help these people out. How can we do this?
all right. We have just a few minutes
Yeah.
left. If you want to share a little bit about your Ascalon story of
Oh.
Demona or whatever, it's Mordecai Vanunu, or anything you want to share with the people here,
Oh,
and
what-
you as well.
One of the walks I had an occasion to do was one in the Middle East, organized by Voice in the Wilderness, known widely because of the leader Kathy Kelly, who was nominated about 4 or 5 times individually for a Nobel Peace Prize. One time in Cincinnati, our local homeless newspaper had a picture taken of she and I. She visited the city and said 2 Nobel laureates or nominees. Of course, mine was somewhat indirect. It was the organization and the people
You
involved.
deserve it.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. Mordecai Vanunu, who was a man who really exposed the fact that Israel, in fact, had nuclear weapons,
Yes.
before started the walk, by chance, the walk that we did in the Middle East, found a book in Cincinnati Public Library, which is a biography of his. When we went to the Middle East, we went to the prison in Ashkelon, and we were protesting. There were about 200 of us. We were all holding up our hands with a peace sign. I was towards the back, the furthest distance from the prison facility itself, but the local authorities were saying we were doing the Nazi salute. We knew better, so most of us continued with the peace sign.
Yeah.
At another time, we had went to another prison where it was a hillside and a prison down here. And if you're on the top of the hill, the prisoners down here, who were all Israeli soldiers who refused to serve in the occupied zones. It was an interesting experience.
important.
Ended up in jail there for a little while. That was an experience. They had stamped all of our passports to be out of town. In effect, happened to be the day I was leaving anyway. Had a good and interesting experience there.
And yourself?
Well, I guess we're into sort of the wrapping up comments. So,
Yeah, just, yeah. What do you
yeah,
wanna- yeah.
you know, I'm glad to be in Iowa again. Thanks everybody for welcoming me back, and my Marcher in the Home host in Iowa City. I just want to tell people that we're here. You know, I'm here to help out with Bold Iowa. Join Bold Iowa and fight the Bakken pipeline that they're proposing to come through your state. This is not an oil pipeline. That is not oil that they're carrying. This is this not noxious stuff called bitumen, and it's mixed with proprietary chemicals they will not tell you about. And if that stuff spills out, it's going to destroy your mosaic, your tile, your groundwater. You know, fracking is huge. It's all tied together, right?
Right.
All these issues that we've spoke of.
So
nuclear
that's
weapons,
Bold, Iowa. You
superpower.
can go
Bold
online.
Iowa, yeah. Go online
Go-
and find out about that and join up with that.
And I would just like to end by sharing a little piece that I think was Dalai Lama just spoke to the California legislature in Sacramento. He talked about globalization and global warming and then the materialistic values of education in our Western culture. And he came up with this thing called global well-being. So I decided I needed to write something. Global well-being is essential for survival. Peace is through inner peace. Happiness is beyond globalization, beyond downsizing, beyond outsourcing, beyond material educational values. Care for others is global well-being. Loving where you can is global well-being. Being kind to yourself is global well-being. Service to others is global well-being. Seeking prayer is global well-being. Renouncing power over others is global well-being. Compassion for those on the road is global well-being. Hospice for the stranger is global well-being. Care for the least of these is global well-being. Care for the two-legged, the four-legged, the finned and feathered beings is global well-being. This, dear friend, is way beyond global warming. Care for the seventh generation yet to come is global well-being. Care for those who live in the houses of the holy of the golden eternity of now is global well-being. These are the ways of the holy modal bounders sitting in front of us here. The holy modal bounders. And this is the beginning of being a good day on planet Earth. And on that, we want to thank John Jorgensen and Berta Lambert, two great peace marchers in our time and all times. Thank you for being here.
Brothers are right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
people.
all. Thank you so much. Very kind.
Well, I hope
You-
that comes across.
that
well.
was-
The timing was perfect.